videos ago, I talked about the story spine. It's 7 sentences that you fill in, and then you have the backbone for your story. Today, I wanted to take that a little further, coming up with the story spine on the fly. It's how I start most of my stories, and it's really a great jumping off point for me to start thinking about the story in a bigger sense and kind of fleshing it all out. It really helped me focus in the story of Recollection City, my webcomic. And since then, I've used the story spine to come up with new stories as well. I wanted to start off with the idea for a character because that is how I usually start. And I know a lot of you start with a character as well. You might have an original character that you're drawing all the time, and then eventually you might get a feeling of, I want to make a story with this. So people start with a theme. I talked about theme in a previous video. I will link to it below. As well as the story structure video. The theme is basically a 1-sentence core idea that you're exploring within your story. It's good to start with that because then you can try and find characters and conflicts that express your theme in the most clear and interesting way. Speaking of starting points, I also made a video in this kind of like series of story that was about coming up with ideas and different kinds of starting points where you can start your story. So we'll start off with a character, and for that I wanted to pick one of my stuffed animals. I have like a thing, I know some people collect toys and stuff. I have some stuffed animals, for example, my shark, Sharkie. I also have this really cute penguin. He's called Humbled. It's because he's a humbled penguin. It's kind of like his species name. I know, I'm so original with names. I really am not. So we also have a Pokemon. This is one of my favorite Pokemon. It's Goomy. I also have this really cute monkey. I also have a Tribble, a Star Trek Tribble. You vibrate. Stop it! Thank you. I thought because he's just so awesome, he's my newest addition to the family, we could go with Sharkie. I did this thing on Instagram where I was like, I found a shark, should I buy it? And everybody was like, yes, please buy it. So, if you voted for me to get Sharkie, I'm very grateful. Sharkie's amazing. He's really soft and huggable. I already have kind of like a headcanon for him. He looks fierce. He is fierce, he can be, if you come near his friends. Like, his role model is the shark from Jaws, just because the shark is so menacing, everybody is scared of him and stuff, but actually, Sharkie is kind of more like an intellectual. He really loves nature documentaries, especially aqua nature documentaries for obvious reasons, because Sharkie loves the aqua life. I thought we could start off with Sharkie as a character and then come up with a story for him. That should be fun. The conflict I just mentioned can be really interesting. The whole idea of like, I have to be this menacing shark, but I actually am really like in love with science. It's also kind of cool to be this really great, like one of the biggest fish in the ocean. So that could be a really great conflict. Let's just start the story spine and see where we end up. So the first sentence of the story spine is once upon a time, and this is where you describe your character. So once upon a time, there was a really great shark called Sharkie who lived in his house in the ocean. Second line of the story spine is, and every day. So this is Sharkie's daily life. This is what he does during the day, but also this is usually a place where you have kind of like a status quo thing going on, where the characters either dissatisfied with their lives or they want something but they really don't dare to go for it, or they're in a situation that's kind of it's holding them back and they need to learn something, and that is where theme comes in. The character needs to change. So Sharkie has this great duality of being a really great shark, but he also just loves nature and stuff. So he could have an issue with his other shark friends who are really trying to uphold an image, and then this nerdy shark comes along who just loves to study nature, study fish, and study the aqua life, and watch documentaries that are narrated by British people. And then the other sharks are just like, dude, why? It'd be a really great conflict. You could also go with another angle. Sharkie wants to make it in the academic world, but because he's a shark, he's being discriminated against because everybody's secretly terrified of him. So you can go with that angle as well. If you do the story spine on your own, you can just come up with a whole list of different kinds of conflict that fit your character and then pick the one that's the most interesting one to you. Let's go with that. And every day, Sharkie was watching nature documentaries and dreaming about becoming a scientist. But he doesn't dare to apply to any schools because he knows that sharks are generally thought of as dangerous and menacing, and he's scared of what other fish will think of him. Poor Sharkie. He's so passionate about science. So the third line of the story spine is until one day, and this is the catalyst. This is where things change. This is where you flip the entire world upside down. An obvious direction to go in would be a catalyst that actually propels Sharkie to get into school, and then he will start to have to deal with these ideas of him being dangerous and stuff, and he would maybe experience discrimination, or there could be some really great scientific expedition that they actually need more like a bodyguard for the scientists, and Sharkie's like, this is my chance, let's just go with the scientist. But then, like, obviously he doesn't want to be there to be the bodyguard, he actually wants to do science himself. So that could be really interesting as well, to have him go with a bunch of other fish who are secretly terrified of him, obviously, but he's on their side, so they're like, this is convenient. But then Sharkie actually feeling really bad because that's what he wants to be doing. So I actually really like that idea of Sharkie having this opportunity and then going with the scientist, but then having this really great conflict of being so close to the thing he loves, but not being able to do it because he has a different function and a different role, and they really, really don't believe that he can be a scientist. So the fourth line of the story spine is, and because of that. So the catalyst was Sharkie gets this opportunity to go on a scientific expedition as a bodyguard to the other fish to keep them safe in the big wide open ocean, and that has a consequence. It can be that Sharkie can now see up close how to conduct all these experiments and how to study the wildlife in the ocean. Maybe they will do a big discovery that he can see up close and he gets really excited about it. But then also he will start to feel that that he is not actually part of the science team, and he feels alone, and he feels like his dream is more distant than ever because the fish treat him in a different way. They treat him differently than they treat their colleagues and stuff. Because of that, Sharkie's able to see everything up close, but also starts to feel really lonely and like his dream is very far away. And that has a consequence as well, and that is the fifth line of the story spine, which is another and because of that. And in between those two lines, in between the two because of that, you can put the midpoint of your story. And the midpoint is usually a place in a story where something happens that kind of flips things around again. It keeps the story interesting. And we haven't talked about theme for Sharkie's story. So what he really deals with is stereotype and the behavior of the other fish towards him. And that's the obstacle to what he wants the most, which is do science. But he's been too afraid. Like at the beginning of the story, he was really too afraid to pursue that because he knows exactly what would happen, and that is something that is happening right now. Theme could be, for example, why would you let other people dictate your life when you have a dream? Or why would you let anybody stand in the way of your dream if it is a good dream? Something along the lines of that, I think, is really appropriate for this story. You could also go more along the lines of what do you do when people put up barriers towards your dream? Then your story can go in different ways. Like in the end, do you want the fish, the other characters, to come around? Like with the theme of do you let other people stand in the way of your dream? You could actually choose to have the fish of the expedition, like the scientific fish, not change. But then Sharkie changes, and he is just gonna accept the fact that he will be treated differently, but he's still gonna try, and he's still gonna do something. Then in the end, you could have him help with another scientific discovery that maybe has him gain some more respect from the other fish, and like maybe there's this tiny group of fish now of like scientific fish who are like, well, maybe sharks can actually be in our school, and maybe sharks can actually be scientists. And then you could kind of end on the note of like, yeah, he will still face a lot of adversity when he goes to school, but at least there's hope. So there's all kinds of different angles, but let's just continue with the story spine. The second big, and because of that, maybe let Sharkie do a scientific discovery, and that kind of makes the fish kind of have an attitude of like, maybe there is a scientist inside of you. And that gives Sharkie a lot of hope. But then something happens, so then I'll start treating him a little differently, and Sharkie gains a lot of hope, like maybe I could actually do this, maybe I could actually be a shark scientist, and then eventually you're gonna work towards what they call the all is lost moment. There's usually a moment where the character, it's the best if you can make them worse off in that moment than they were at the beginning, because that will make their comeback in the third act, the final act, that much stronger. And now, since Sharkie has a lot of hope about becoming a scientist and actually making friends with actual scientists and doing scientific discoveries, it would be great to have something happen, maybe along the lines of the sharks are showing up and, make Sharkie look really bad, or something really bad is about to happen to the scientist, and then Sharkie has to really step in and protect him, but that can look like the scientist maybe didn't see it. So Sharkie just suddenly comes off very violent or very angry, and that scares them again. So you can have this great all is lost moment of Sharkie's hopes just get completely crushed, and the fish are back to maybe they even kick him out of the group. Like, we don't need, if you're gonna be like this, we don't even want a bodyguard anymore, just go away. And that would be absolutely worse for him at this moment than he was at the beginning, where he was just like dreaming of being a scientist, not actually doing it, but still dreaming about it, and now his dreams are crushed. And then the next part of the story span is until finally, and that is where your character engages with the theme, engages with kind of like the thing they need to be learning. They gain a new insight usually, and if you're going with the theme of why you let others stand in the way of your dream, then Sharkie would kind of have an epiphany. Maybe he will find some kind of mentor, that we've run in before on the bottom of the ocean, and he gains this great insight of like, well, I can still pursue the school even though the fish don't, are not helping. And then in Disney fashion, usually there would be something where he can rescue the fish, or the whole kind of like misunderstanding gets resolved. This is the third act, the climax, whatever you want to call it, of your story. I would really love to have Sharkie do another scientific discovery, a big one, and something where he can, and this is where you, that's the kind of stuff that you need to figure out later when you have filled in the story spine. Like, he is gonna, like, you don't know the technicalities of that yet, but you can still kind of fill it in of like, Sharkie does this great scientific discovery that kind of proves his worth as a scientist. He regains the respect of the scientists, and one of them actually says, okay, I want to do a good work for you when you apply at science school. And so Sharkie kind of gets this vindication, and he really overcomes the self-doubt in that moment of like, I cannot do this, and he is like, well, I actually can, because I just did another scientific discovery and I'm gonna make it. Or you can even like let the fish scientist be, and Sharkie doing a big scientific discovery on his own, going with that to the science school, like the marine science school, and he actually gets in with that because it's a major discovery, and they're like, well, why not have the first shark scientist here? That could be great. So that's two ways you can resolve it. That's what I can come up right now on the fly. The last part of the story spine, this is the sentence that gets forgotten in the story spine as it's been spread around by Pixar. They actually forget this step, but it's very important It is an ever since that day. And it's important because it is kind of a mirror to the beginning of your story, and this is the ending, and you can clearly see how the characters changed. And in the case of Sharkie, it would be like an ever since that day, Sharkie became an actual scientist, or Sharkie went to science school, studying hard, and to become the first science shark. So that is great, because at the beginning he didn't want to try, he didn't dare to, and in the end he's doing it. So he overcame his fear of being treated differently. You could make some point of like, you see him going to school, and then there's still a group of other fish who are like, what are you doing here, or whatever, and but he doesn't care. Something along the lines of that to really show his change. The story of Sharkie. He's so large, it doesn't even fit in a frame. Sharkie the Science Shark. The most original name ever. Well, Sharkie your tail. So you can just go fill in the story spine with stuff that you love. Try to make it a cohesive story with a clear theme. Watch the other videos on story if you haven't. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your support, for subscribing, for liking. It's really awesome to see, and thank you for all the comments that say it's helpful. Keep them coming. Also, if you have any suggestions for subjects you would like me to tackle, then please go ahead. I want to do some more videos about art block in the coming time, because that's a subject I'm really passionate about. I also want to start a series on thumbnailing. We're actually going to get into comic creation, like a practical comic creation. But I want to get some story stuff out first. There's a ton more to say about story, obviously. But this was a good start, I think. This is kind of like basics. If you want to have more content, I have a weekly email list where I send extra info to. For example, last time I talked about theme. And then in my email newsletter, I also talked about having a log line for your story, which is a different thing. I share resources I find and any insights I have. So if you're interested in having even more info about making comics, subscribe to my email list, because I love writing and I love giving my email subscribers some extra info. So if that's something you like, go to the description and find a link to subscribe to my email list. Subscribe to the channel if you like it. Leave it a thumbs up. And I will see you next week. Sharkie the Science Shark. I actually really like this story and I wish I had more time to draw it. That's run out of time.